What's up, everybody? I'm Brendan. I'm a full stack developer based in Brooklyn, New York. Today, we're going to be building out Feedster. It's part of the Introduction to jQuery course here on Code Academy. It's basically just like Twitter. We are going to be adding a bunch of animations slash effects to this kind of Twitter clone. It's actually definitely one of the funner projects in this course. We're going to be adding some kind of hover effects to certain buttons. But definitely the funnest part, and honestly, one of the coolest features that we're going to be building is, if you know Twitter, there's a 140 character limit. Actually, I'm not so sure if there's still a 140 character limit, but the last time I used Twitter, which was probably about 2 years ago, there was definitely a 140 character limit. And you know that when you type a tweet on Twitter, the amount of characters you have left goes down uh, based on however many characters you're typing. And that's the feature that we're going to be building today. We're also going to be able to change the styling of that you have however many characters left. So when it reaches below the amount allowed, aka 140, if it goes over 140, the styling is actually going to change to red, which is, that's how Twitter works. So what are the key concepts we're going to be covering? We are going to do an in-depth dive into event handlers. We're going to be using chaining, which is where we take event handlers and we actually chain event handlers on event handlers. We're also going to be using the event.currentTarget property and really kind of understanding what this event object is, this mysterious event object. We'll be talking about that a little more later, as well as just kind of mouse events in general. When you hover over a box, that's a mouse enter. When you leave that box, that would be a mouse leave, things like this. Anyways, let's jump into the project. All right. In this project, you will help Feedster add dynamic behavior to their website. They need help adding hover functionality to their navigation menu and buttons. If you're up for the challenge, of course we are. Feedster also wants help limiting their users' posts to 140 characters or less. You'll need to use jQuery documentation to figure out how to implement this using the jQuery keyup method. Okay, step 1, add hover functionality to the navigation menu. In the next two steps, you will make a navigation menu appear when you hover over menu and make it disappear when you navigate away from the navigation menu. Add an event handler to main.js that shows the nav.menu element when a user mouses over the menu element. Now we know the first part about writing in jQuery is that we have to add an event handler to the document. And what are we waiting for? Well, we're waiting for the document to be ready. So this is always the first thing you have to do when writing jQuery. And that ready takes a callback function. And in here is where we can actually finally start putting in the event handlers that we want to. So step 1, it says add an event handler to main.js that shows the nav menu element when a user mouses over the menu element. So that means let's grab the menu element and add an event listener, or sorry, an event handler to that. And remember, an event handler consists of a listener, aka what event is going to be triggered that calls this callback function. So it says a user mouses over. So let's use mouse enter. When it enters in this menu element, call this callback function, which is going to call show the element with the class of nav menu. Let's save that, and that is it for step 1. Okay, step 2, add an event handler to main.js that hides the nav menu element when a user's mouse leaves the nav menu element. Okay. So when we hover over that menu, it's going to show the nav menu. Now, with that nav menu showing, we want to add another event handler to that nav menu when it's showing. And what do we want to say? We want to say when a user's mouse leaves, aka let's add this mouse leave listener. and then call this function when that happens, which will hide that nav menu. Let's save that. Let's just make sure it works. So when we hover over menu, it's shown, and this is the nav menu. Now when we leave the nav menu, it should hide it. So let's see what happens when we leave this nav menu here. Oh, there it goes. Let's see it again. See ya, bye. Cool. So that is it for step 2. Step 3. In the next 3 steps, you will add hover functionality to the +1 button elements. Add an event handler to main.js that adds the button hover class to the button elements when a user mouses over a button element. Okay, so grab the element with a class of button. Let's add an event handler to it. And when the mouse enters that element with class of button, call this callback function. Okay. So I'm going to kind of skip ahead because I know step 3, step 4, and step 5 all go together. So don't be confused when I'm already going to step 4. I'll eventually go back to step 3 when we're done with that, but I just want to show you what step 4 and step 5 entails. Step 4, chain a mouse leave event handler to the mouse enter event handler you added the last step. Inside the callback function, remove the button hover class from button. Step 5, there are multiple +1 buttons. Haha. And we only want the current button to change when a user's mouse enters and leaves. Change the button callback function so only the current button is impacted by mouse enter and mouse leave events. Okay, so if you went through the interactive lesson before this project, then you encountered this mysterious event object. And this event object is how we're going to tell which particular button we're on. So right now, as the way it stands, this selector right here grabs all of the elements with the class of button. And you can see over here that there's definitely at least 2 tweets with this same kind of button class. Now, step 5 says that because there are multiple +1 buttons, we only want the current button to change when a user's mouse enters and leaves. So somehow we're going to have to only change the styling of whatever button we enter. So when we enter this, we don't want this to also change at the same time. So how do we do that? We use the event object. So in this callback function, in order to access that event object, we need to pass it in as an argument to the function, aka this callback function right here. So with an event, with an argument event, we are going to be able to access the event.currentTarget. So this allows us to know specifically what button we're actually hovering over. And what does it say up? And what does it say up here in step 3? Adds the button hover class to button elements when a user mouses over a button. So let's add the class to whatever element we are currently on, aka the whatever current target we're on. And what class do we want to add? We want to add the button hover class. And you're probably confused, why are we not adding dot button hover? And that's just the way that this add class method works. This method already knows that we're adding a class. So adding a dot here would just be redundant and totally not work. So let's just add button hover without the dot. Okay, so let's save that. And let's test it. So when I hover over this button, it should change. The styling should change. Awesome. Notice that nothing changes over here. But now notice that the styling remains the same even when we leave. And that makes sense, right? Because we haven't added another event listener to remove that class. And that's what we're going to do actually in step 4. So step 3 is done. Step 4, on a mouse leave event handler, chain a mouse leave event handler to the mouse enter event handler you added on the last step. So let's do that. So, okay, we're on that same event handler. Let's chain one on to that same element we're currently on. So this dot on is connected to this button element. And remember, this dot on is also connected to this same button element. So on mouse leave, we are going to want to grab that same event object so that we can tell whatever button we're currently on. And inside the callback function, remove the button hover class from the button. So let's just use the same exact syntax. Event.currentTarget.remove class. Remove class. Save that. 4 is done. And we just completed step 5. We're dynamically changing the styling of whatever button we hovered on because we have access to this event object and then the event.currentTarget. So step 5 is done as well. And let's test that. We hover over this. Nothing changes when we leave. The styling goes back to what it was. Same thing down here. Perfect. So step 6. Now this is the fun part. Feedster wants to display the remaining number of characters that a user can enter into their comment box. Each time the user types a letter, we want to change the character count. For this, we can use a keyUp event listener. In main.js, use the .on method to add a keyUp listener to the element with the class of post text. Leave the callback function empty until the next step. All right, so let me just make sure that I'm in the right spot. So if this is one big thing, here we go. So this is one big thing. Where does it end? Here. Now let me just add a space there so it's a little more clear. So we need to add an event handler to the element with a class of post text on this weird event listener keyUp. We are going to call callback function. It says leave the callback function empty until the next step. So step 6 is done. Step 7 in main.js, call jQuery's.focus method on post text. This will cause the text area to expect type text as soon as the page loads. Okay. So let me just put that down here. Post text on, or sorry, dot focus. All right, step 7 is done. Step 8, after each keyUp event, we want to count the number of characters in the new post. Add an event argument to the keyUp event listener's callback function. Inside the callback function, declare a variable called post and set it equal to the jQuery object event.currentTarget.value. Okay. So on keyUp, we're going to have access to whatever is going on in this text area here. And that's because of this method that we call down here, .focus. So we're able to see what text is being typed into this text area if we enter in this event object. We pass it in as an argument to that callback function. And then let's declare our variable post and grab the value of whatever we're typing in to this post text area here. So event current target val. So if we typed cheese in here, cheese, then this post variable is now equal to cheese. Let's remove that. Okay, so step 8 is done. Step 9. Now let's use a bit of JavaScript and math to determine the number of characters a user has left for their comment. Under the post variable, declare another variable called remaining and set it to 140 minus the length of post. remaining equals 140 characters, aka the limit, minus the length of post. So post dot length. And post is a string right now. And let's say it's cheese, C. Cheese is 6 characters long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when I hit key up on that last cheese, so I type down E, when I let go of that key, the key up event fires. And because we pass in this event object, we're actually able to kind of count or keep track of what is being typed into this text area. And that is saved to this post variable. Now this remaining variable, it takes the number 140, it looks at whatever our post is, and it calls the method .length on it. And let's say cheese is 6 characters long, so 140 minus 6 is what? 134. So that would tell me that the remaining characters left is 134. Okay? So we're kind of setting up this character counting feature just like Twitter. Step 9 is done. Now step 10. Now that we know how many characters the user has left, we need to update that number in the HTML. Still in the keyUp callback function, add the following jQuery code. Okay. The code above will update the number of characters remaining. Run the code and try typing a new post. You should see the character number change after each keystroke. So what this does is the characters element refers to this, which is probably a span or something, I'm going to guess. And .html is actually accessing whatever this HTML is. And then what are we doing right now? Well, with this .html method, whatever we pass to this .html method, we can actually change the value of the HTML. So let's say that this is a span and there is 140 inside that span HTML tags. Well, with this .html method, we can actually change whatever is inside those span tags. So 140 minus post.length. So, and post here is cheese. So 140 minus 6 is 134. And that's what we should see here, 134 characters remaining. So let's save that. And let's type in cheese. There you go. It changes dynamically based on whatever character is being inputted into this text area. So step 11. To finish, let's make the word count message turn red if the user runs out of characters. To do this, we will use a simple if-else statement. Under the remaining variable declaration, add an if statement with a condition of remaining is less than or equal to 0. If remaining is less than or equal to 0, use the add class method to give word count a class of red. Okay. So under the remaining variable declaration, we're going to add this if statement. So if remaining is less than or equal to 0, what are we going to do? Grab the element class of word count and add class of red. Now remember, we're not adding the class of .red because this method knows that it expects a class. So putting .red would not make sense here. That's just how jQuery was written. Okay, so step 11 is done. Step 12, finally add an else statement to the if condition you just created. If the value of remaining is above 0, remove the red class from the element with the class of word count. Else, copy this, not add class, remove the class. So if the remaining number of characters is greater than 0, take off that red class. So let's try it out. Cheese, 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 cheese. There we go. Wow, that was actually perfect. 0 characters remaining. 1 character remaining. Awesome. So if the amount of characters remaining is less than or equal to 0, it's going to add that class of red to this text right here. Else, if it's not, if it doesn't fit, or if this condition is not true, it's going to remove that class. That was funny that literally the amount of cheeses that I typed was the perfect amount. Okay, sweet. So step 12 is done. Step 13, now try it out. Type a message and go over the 140 character limit to see the message turn red. Then shorten the message and the word count message should return to black. And we just did that with cheese. Alrighty, folks, so that's it. That is the Feedster project. We did another in-depth dive on event handlers. I'm hoping that event handlers are kind of becoming second nature to you. I also am super excited for you because you just built out one of Twitter's main features, the kind of character count feature. And this can not only be used in Twitter, it can also be used in blogs. Let's say you want to create your own website, you want to create a blog, or you want to create a message board. You could totally take this feature and build it out for whatever app you're building. And that is the power of jQuery. It just takes super simple syntax. It boils down vanilla JavaScript to just a few lines of code. And it only took us, what, 10 minutes to do? Yeah. Alrighty. So that is it. I will see you in the next video. Bye.